This piece of plastic is manufactured entirely out of seaweed.
This is literally made out of seaweed.
And it was done here on the sunny coastline of Perth, Australia. In this video, we'll be going inside the Perth startup that believes it can replace plastic for good.
I knew that the idea was good for the planet, but it's like, can we actually make a business out of it?
And we'll be showing you exactly how they turn seaweed into plastic.
And if Uluu succeeds, what does the world look like in 10 years' time? I think
super excited. We're about to head to Perth to go meet the Uluu team, check out their factory and everything they're building. So we're about to jump on the plane.
I think what's cool about companies like this is that we don't know if these sort of companies are going to work out. We were actually just having a debate in the car about, is this possible? Can we produce this cheaper plastic just out of seaweed?
Yeah, we quit our jobs 2 years ago now to tell the stories of technology companies that are trying to change the world for the better. And I can't think of a better example than Uluu. This is why we're squeezing the back of this car.
I'm Julia, originally from Brazil. I'm an oceanographer and now an entrepreneur as well, working hard to replace plastic with seaweed.
Before Uluu, Julia spent years building the first map of ocean plastic pollution in Australian waters. She led multi-vessel and even aircraft missions to map the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. However, despite working as the chief scientist and managing a team of over 80 researchers, Julia couldn't shake one thought. Just mapping an environmental disaster isn't the same as solving one.
I was getting quite depressed on just bringing a lot of bad news. And I'm like, I think we know enough about this problem. I want to do something about it. So the first job I got was in a non-for-profit called the Ocean Cleanup, based in the Netherlands. That was an awesome experience around working with engineers to develop machines capable of grabbing rubbish from oceans and rivers. But again, like over time, I was like, this is the symptom of the problem. And personally, I was like, I need to go more upstream.
The more we spoke to Julia, the more we heard this word, upstream. If cleaning the ocean and recycling doesn't fix plastic waste, then what does? Why are we still so obsessed with plastic in the 21st century?
Yeah, I think plastic is a material that we end up addicted to, and there is some fair reasons for that. But the flip side is that it also has a very dark side of it that we've been finding out more about in recent decades. You know, it's made of fossil fuels, which is something that we know we need to leave on the ground. During use, is releasing these persistent particles, the microplastics, that now we know are bringing issues to our own health, particularly babies and child. And then, of course, we have the highly visible problem, which is it's cheap, so we're using it once, discarding it, and it's a material that's very hard to recycle. Unless you are in a rich country, you're not going to recycle because it's not profitable.
What if I told you that this was a completely new type of rock? However, unlike other rocks, this one didn't form from the earth. First identified in 2012, scientists have dubbed these unnatural rocks Plastiglomerates. They're rock-like formations of melted plastic fused with natural debris like sand and shells. Since mass production of plastic began in the 1950s, over 9 billion tonnes of plastic waste has been produced. And what if I told you that over half of that has been produced in the last 13 years alone? Really think about that for a second. We've produced so much plastic that artificial rocks are washing up onto beaches. Our planet is literally becoming part plastic. Yet, with all of this production, only 9% of the plastic ever produced has been recycled. Experts say that the plastic problem is being solved in the wrong place. With plastic production expected to double by 2050, it became really clear to the Uluu founders that the only way to solve plastic waste was to go upstream. And that meant replacing the material itself. I hope you're enjoying the episode. Now, productions like this actually take a lot of effort to organize to get this sort of access. If you are enjoying the episode, would really appreciate it if you could click the subscribe button, and we'll have a lot more of these coming out. Back to the show. Julia had spent years watching well-intentioned companies struggle to keep up with exponential pollution. After working at the Ocean Cleanup and the Minderoo Foundation, Julia had stopped asking how she could limit the damage of plastic. Instead, she started asking how she could replace it entirely.
And I start to study a lot on can we actually come up with a material that is natural, that is made by nature and can return to nature at the end of its life, that deliver the things that we love about plastic, but actually being good for the world. So I had this idea of joining two things. One is instead of using fossil fuels, using seaweed as that source for the material. And then rather than doing plastic, to actually work with bacteria, with nature, to make this natural material called PHAs that you can actually, we are producing some right now here, right?
The idea made intuitive sense, but Julia's entire career had been in science and nonprofits. To build a company around it, she needed someone she didn't yet know.
I knew that the idea was good for the planet, but it's can we actually make a business out of it? So I was searching for a co-founder that has more experience in corporate and finance. So I met went into dates with a few potential co-founders, and I think with Michael, he liked the pitch, and I really felt that he had complementary skills. So we spent a year together turning this idea into a business blueprint and really deciding whether we want to dedicate our lives to make it real.
I think I was definitely emotionally engaged by the idea, and yeah, this kind of sounds too good to be true, that you can have this material that's produced by nature that almost magically behaves like plastic, performs like plastic, yet you can return it to nature at the end of its life.
Back in early 2021, Julia and Michael committed to Uluu. They got a small investment from a startup accelerator, they got free lab space from the University of Western Australia, and they hired their first scientist.
We were able to hire our first kind of fermentation scientist, hire a small bioreactor, and start to prove out the technical feasibility of producing PHA. We had kind of grams at that time, and we were lucky to have grams.
In just 4 years, the team went from scrapping together a few grams of bioplastic to upscaling to 25 staff, a working test plant, and a larger facility being built south of Perth. But we wanted to know how Uluu actually works. How do they go from seaweed to plastic? It starts with seaweed, farmed at scale in Indonesian waters, one of the world's largest seaweed producers. The seaweed is then broken down using enzymes, biological catalysts, into its component sugars. Think of it as juicing the seaweed. Next is fermentation. That sugar liquid is fed to bacteria in a fermentation tank. The bacteria eat the sugar, and as they grow, they produce a natural polymer called PHA inside their own cells. The bacteria essentially get fat on seaweed, and that fat is the plastic. After fermentation, the bacteria are processed to extract the PHA, which comes out as a fine powder. That powder is then melted and cut into small pellets. These are what Uluu actually sells. Finally, those pellets go to manufacturers, who melt them using the exact same methods as conventional plastic, with no new equipment required. When we visited Uluu's facility in Perth, the first thing Julia did was show us what they'd actually made.
So we've heard a lot about Uluu in theory now, and I think it's time to see some products and see what this plastic is actually turned into.
Here we have a display that shows some of the prototypes that we've done to date. One that we're very excited about is our textiles. This one is made with Uluu and a cotton.
Wow.
So it's half cotton, half Uluu.
Wow.
Another area is cosmetics. So we're very keen to do packaging for cosmetics. So here you see you have the body made of glass, and then this lid here, it really looks like plastic, but
wow.
it's made of seaweed.
This is literally made out of seaweed, which is incredible. And it's incredible that you guys have made this happen in such a short amount of time.
The beauty of it is what we sell is little nurdles like that. It's called the Uluu Pellets. Yeah. And this is sold to plastic manufacturers. And from their perspective, is exactly their machinery. And instead of melting petrochemical plastic, they melting those Uluu pellets. Yeah. And those manufacturers like, oh my God, this is plug and play. And now instead of using plastic, I'm using seaweed to make products.
The thing that blew me away about Uluu is the plug and play nature of it. Manufacturers, they don't need new equipment, they just swap in Uluu pellets and use their existing machines. That's what makes it all scalable. And that's the same challenge that most startups face today. How do you remove that friction from making customers say yes? AI has birthed a whole new saturation of different types of software companies. And the expectations now is that you can't have friction. The onboarding needs to be seamless. And for a lot of startups selling to enterprises, one of the biggest friction points is SOC 2 compliance. The traditional path for this looks like consultants, spreadsheets, and manual audits. Definitely not plug and play. And that's where Vanta comes in. They automate compliance. SOC 2, ISO 27001, and HIPAA. They help teams get audit ready faster, and they give you continuous monitoring. If you're building a startup and you think compliance is going to slow you down, it doesn't have to. We've got a special offer for you at vanta.com/Sachin and Adam. It's $1,000 off, and the link is in the description below. But why do they use seaweed? There are companies making plastic alternatives out of mushrooms, corn, even algae. We wanted to know what makes seaweed the right starting point, and if the plastic it produces is actually any good.
On the feedstock side, we like seaweed because it's scalable, it's affordable, and it's regenerative. You're not competing with arable land, it doesn't require fertilizers or fresh water. You can scale it and deliver positive externalities into the environment. On the polymer side, we like PHAs, which are natural polymers. So nature understands it, and nature can break it back down again at the end of its life. But it has this unique, characteristic in that it actually performs like plastics. So it's strong, it's durable, it's waterproof, etc. In contrast to others, like some people use, mycelium or whatever it might be, algae, it behaves more like paper than plastic. So it gets wet, it's soggy and falls apart. It's not going to perform like plastic in mainstream applications, so it's more niche.
And the PHA family isn't one material, it's a whole spectrum, which means Uluu's ambitions don't stop at cosmetics caps.
We are currently producing a type of PHA called PHBV, which is semi-crystalline. It's better for rigid applications, for textile applications, but different organisms, different microorganisms can produce PHAs that do that. So whilst we're kind of constrained in some ways, although the market for the materials for injection molding and textiles is ridiculously large, if we want to go into those more elastic style materials or plastic replacements, then we can tweak our process and tweak our microorganism to get there.
The material works in theory, but Uluu's specific challenge and their specific advantage is in how they make it. Because the way they produce PHA is unlike anyone else.
Seaweed also has some unique carbohydrates. You have agar, you have carrageenan, you have alginate. So for those, we have to develop the enzymes ourselves. We just patented an enzyme, so we have a patent on that, is we call agarase. So the enzymes break down the agar into a sugar that's called galactose. And what happens is your conversion ratio from seaweed to amount of sugar you get, it doubles just with the enzyme.
Wow.
But the most unexpected part of the tour wasn't the lab, it was what happens to the seaweed after they've extracted what they need.
So seaweed doesn't only contain sugars, it also contains proteins and lipids. When you do that process with the seaweed, we kind of steal the carbohydrates, we chop it up into the sugars, into the liquid fraction. And then what we left over is a processed seaweed biomass that now is very high in protein. So the seaweed that we're currently working with, when we buy that seaweed, is about 10% protein. After we steal out the carbohydrates, it becomes 50% protein. So all of a sudden, you have something that's a valuable ingredient for feed and food markets.
Plastic from seaweed, fish food from the leftovers. 2 revenue streams from one factory. The science is working, but there is one question that determines whether any of this goes anywhere. And it's the same question every potential customer asks within 60 seconds of hearing the pitch. How much more expensive is Uluu plastic than traditional plastic we already see on the market?
Yeah, I mean, at the pellet level, we're a few times more expensive than plastic today. And that's just a function of scale and kind of where the technology is. But we have a pretty clear pathway and kind of the potential for that technology to improve and our production efficiency and yields to improve, converting seaweed to PHA, where we can get to parity with conventional plastics on cost. I think it's like important to distinguish, like, we are producing pellets, right? We are producing pellets to replace plastic pellets. So really upstream in the supply chain, we want to become like the Dow of the future, replace the petrochemical companies.
Dow Chemical is one of the largest materials companies on Earth, and plastic isn't a niche product. It's produced at 400 million tonnes every year. That's the category Uluu believes it can eventually disrupt. And Michael says it without blinking.
I think we have a really clear vision for Uluu and kind of a pathway to scale the business to a point where we can replace plastic, in that 100 million tonne kind of capacity. So plastic today, there's 400 million tonnes of plastic pellets produced every year. It's a scary big challenge to try and do, but I think that's what the team kind of thrives on a little bit. Like, that's why we exist, to kind of solve these big challenges.
400 million tonnes of plastic requires an equally enormous feedstock. So where does the seaweed come from at scale?
The seaweed economy already existing, particularly in Southeast Asia. Give or take, we produce 30 million tons of seaweed every year. So our strategy is to tap into those existing seaweed producers, so partner with them. We kind of turn seaweed into plastic, and we leave the growing of seaweed to the farmers that we're partnering with. So our neighbors, Indonesia, which is where our seaweed comes from, they are the second largest producer of seaweed in the world after China. Indonesia alone, in Indonesian waters, could be producing half of the seaweed that we need if we expand the industry. So they can become like the Saudi Arabia of seaweed plastic.
The seaweed supply is theoretically solvable, but here's the honest version of what stands between Uluu and global scale. It's not just science, and it's not just capital. It's whether the economics of plastic ever makes switching the rational choice, or whether that requires governments to change the rules.
There's a world where you could survive on cost, and you can get to a point with what we're doing that can be equal to or better than fossil plastics on cost. But to accelerate that then regulation's incredibly important as well. So I think you can do those two things in parallel.
The way that government can help us and help themselves as well is really, like, if you look at waste management, there is a lot of taxpayer money that goes into dealing with problematic plastic, right?
I think we want to build Uluu into a brand like the Gore-Tex for sustainability, and we want businesses to be proud that their products are made with Uluu, and customers to be demanding that products are made with Uluu for those more price kind of sensitive things. Whether it's packaging for your food or something like that. Sometimes we're going to have to compete more on cost, and therefore we have a technology and a process that fundamentally we believe can do that.
So if all of that comes together, the cost, the regulation, the brand, what does the world actually look like?
You see Uluu prevalent on the shelf, like products made with Uluu. You have large-scale seaweed farming, which is reducing or removing carbon pollution from the environment. You have seaweed as a regenerative marine crop, removing excess nitrogen and phosphorus and kind of eutrophication issues from our oceans, so helping to restore ocean health. And you have materials like that we're working with, or that can replace plastic, that are kind of compatible with our own bodies and aren't creating kind of persistent microplastic pollution that's kind of currently getting into everything.
I think we see a world where the production of this material is very decentralized, and we have a lot of seaweed getting farmed in remote communities, even in Australia, up north, right? Seaweed can bring the farm to the desert. So a lot of seaweed farming. And then a lot of our factories on those areas, we look like it's like a brewing, right? This fermenter, the next scale, we really look like a little creatures for those that know fermenter, right? So it's a world where we have a lot of communities not relying on fossil fuels from overseas, but actually farming seaweeds and turning into this material that deliver the things that we like about plastic while bringing social, environmental, and economic benefits to that community. If you look at your product and it looks exactly the same, but if you look at the story behind the product, you're actually creating goodness in the world.
That's the best case. And it's a genuinely compelling one. But Uluu is 4 years old. They're producing 100 kilos of plastic a year, and the scale of what they're describing, replacing even a fraction of global plastic production, is an engineering, financial, and political challenge that will take decades, not years. Julia knows this better than anyone, and she has a comparison that keeps coming up when investors, partners, or skeptics push back.
A few decades ago, everybody was like, renewable energy is never going to compete with fossil energy. I think nowadays we're pretty good on that. And now we need to do the same with chemicals because we're a bit behind. Can renewable chemicals like plastic compete with petrochemicals? And we believe so.
This rock, the Plastiglomerate, is what happens when a material outlives its usefulness. It doesn't disappear, it becomes part of the landscape. The founders of Uluu didn't look at that and see inevitability. They saw a design flaw, and they went back to work on fixing it. From a boat dragging nets through the Indian Ocean, to a lab in Perth, to a cosmetics cap that costs a few cents more and leaves no microplastic behind. The plastic problem wasn't made in a day, and it won't be solved in one. But for the first time, someone is working on the right part of it. Hey, it's Adam here. Thanks for watching this episode of The Satch and Adam Show. We have plenty of episodes like this on our channel, so please make sure to check them all out. And if you really like this, hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers we have, the more we can make bigger and better productions, and it means you won't miss out on anything in the future. I'll see you next time.